Okay, so get this, listeners, today. We're diving into a world where the line between fact and fiction gets a little blurry. A fictional podcast, actually, that's sending shivers down our spines.
Oh,
Yeah, so we're going to unpack an episode of Shadow and Enigma Hunters. Have you ever heard of it?
I can't say that I have. Tell me more.
So it's a podcast all about mysteries, and the unexplained. And this particular episode, it really got me thinking.
What's it all about then?
So picture this, right? An old, almost breathing library in a small town.
Okay, I'm intrigued already. I love a good library.
Right. But this one, it's rumored to be haunted by a vanished librarian named Clara.
A haunted library. I mean, you know what they say, every library has its secrets. But a library as the epicenter of the supernatural?
Yeah.
Classic. It's a classic trope for a reason, though.
I know, right? But there's something about those endless rows of books, the scent of old paper, the hushed whispers. It practically invites us to imagine the stories those walls could tell, both real and imagined,
Absolutely. It's the perfect setting for a spooky story.
Exactly. And the way Shadow and Enigma Hunters describes this particular library, you can practically feel the weight of its history pressing down on you. It's like the building itself is holding its breath, waiting for someone to uncover its secrets.
And that's where these fictional podcasters come in, I presume.
You got it. They're on the case. Which brings us to our vanished librarian, Clara. 40 years ago, she disappeared without a trace, leaving behind nothing but whispers and rumors. Now a disappearance like that, especially in a small town.
Oh, it's bound to spark all sorts of speculation.
Exactly. What do you think happened to her?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
And the Shadow and Enigma Hunters crew, they dive headfirst into these local legends. Some folks say Clara's spirit never left the library, eternally bound to the place she loved.
A classic ghost story setup. I like it.
And it gets creepier, so listen to this. Visitors to the library have reported some seriously strange occurrences. Lights flickering, books randomly falling from shelves, even whispers that seem to emanate from the pages themselves. Makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Of course, there are often perfectly logical explanations for these sorts of events, especially in a place as old as a library. Faulty wiring, drafts, acoustics, playing tricks on the mind. Those could easily be at play.
Yeah, that's true.
But I must admit, the way you're describing how Shadow and Enigma Hunters sets the scene, you can't help but feel a shiver run down your spine. I am eager to hear what happens next.
And that's where the real fun begins. Our intrepid fictional podcasters decide to experience this library for themselves.
Oh, they do?
Oh, yeah. Picture this. A group of friends armed with flashlights and recorders.
That's sick.
Venturing into a library rumored to be haunted. Would you be brave enough to do that?
Well, they do say courage is often fueled by curiosity, and what's more intriguing than a mystery steeped in whispers and shadows? I have to admit, though, a good EMF reader and some strategically placed cameras wouldn't hurt either, right?
Oh, for sure. But it's that pull of the unknown, that desire to see if the legends are true. And as this Shadow and Enigma Hunters crew steps inside the library, you can practically feel the atmosphere shift. They even describe this heavy, almost suffocating feeling, like the air itself is thick with secrets.
Sensory details like that are so effective in pulling the listener in, wouldn't you say? It's one thing to hear about a spooky library, but to feel that heaviness, that sense of being watched, it creates a whole other level of immersion.
Right. It's like stepping into a horror movie. And just when you think it couldn't get any creepier, one of the friends, Sarah, she stumbles upon an old book.
Ooh.
It's like the book was practically begging to be found, tucked away on a dusty shelf, almost whispering her name.
Ah, the classic discovered artifact.
Yeah.
It's a staple of these kinds of stories.
It is, isn't it?
But it's more than just a trope, don't you think? It represents a tangible link to the past, a potential key to unlocking the mysteries that haunt this library. What secrets do you think this book holds?
Oh, buckle up, because this is where things get really interesting. This book, it contains a passage about a librarian who becomes trapped within the very walls of her workplace, unable to escape. Can you imagine the chills running down their spines as they read those words aloud?
A story within a story. How clever. It's like layers upon layers of intrigue, each one drawing us deeper into the mystery. And you have to wonder, is this simply a fictional account, or could it be a reflection of Clara's own fate?
And as if on cue, as soon as Sarah finishes reading that passage, guess what happens?
Oh, what happens? Give me goosebumps. What happens?
Clara appears before the group, but not in like a frightening jump scare kind of way. The podcast describes her with this aura of sadness, her eyes filled with a deep longing. and she has this urgent plea. She needs them to find another book, a hidden book, the key to helping her find peace. What would you do if you were standing in their shoes, face to face with a ghost asking for your help?
Oh, wow. That's a tough one. Do you run towards the unknown or shy away from it? It's a classic dilemma, and it's what makes these stories so compelling. The hidden book itself is a powerful symbol, don't you think? It could represent lost knowledge, a missing piece of the puzzle, or even Clara's voice, silenced for so long and now seeking to be heard.
Can you imagine standing there knowing you might hold the key to freeing a trapped spirit? They're now on this frantic search, right, for this hidden book.
Oh, I bet.
A needle in a haystack of, ancient whispers and dusty tomes.
Right.
But here's the thing, the library itself, it's working against them. Shelves are shifting, lights are going haywire.
Oh, no.
And this ancient clock on the wall, it starts chiming, but it's chiming an hour that doesn't exist.
Really?
It's like some distorted echo of time.
Oh, it's creepy.
It's enough to make you want to turn tail and run, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's like the environment itself is becoming this malevolent force.
Yes.
But, it ratchets up the tension, right? It makes those characters, those fictional podcasters, and us, the listeners, question what's real and what's just our imaginations running wild.
And just when you think it can't get any weirder, they find it. A hidden room, tucked away behind a shifting bookcase.
Ooh.
And inside, this massive book chained to a pedestal, covered in strange symbols. You know they're going to touch it, right?
Of course. They have to. It's like a law of nature at this point. Curiosity always wins, right? But this chained book, it's more than just a source of danger, isn't it? It's symbolic, don't you think, of the knowledge that Clara is so desperate to share, the knowledge that's been kept hidden for far too long.
And, of course, the second they touch the book, bam, they're hit with these intense visions, glimpses into Clara's life, her lost love, a fateful decision. It all comes rushing out, all tied to this mysterious book.
Oh, wow. The past bleeding into the present. It's a theme we see time and time again in ghost stories, isn't it? It suggests that time itself is fluid, that the past can reach out and touch us in ways we never expected. But, it makes you wonder, is Clara trying to warn them or is she drawing them further into danger? What would you make of that?
Right. And just as they're about to unchain the book, a shadow emerges from it. But this isn't just any shadow. This one seems sentient, aware, And get this, it warns them about the book. It tells them that some truths are best left buried. What would you do? Would you risk it all for the sake of truth and maybe helping Clara find peace?
It's the classic dilemma, isn't it? Curiosity versus self-preservation. The pursuit of knowledge versus the potential for unimaginable consequences. It's a question we all have to face at some point in our lives, even if the stakes aren't quite as, supernatural.
So what do? They open the book, of course. A blinding flash of light. Clara screams, "It's pure chaos!" The shadow lunges, tries to drag them into the book, but they manage to escape, but barely. The library is now sealed shut, but the book remains open on that pedestal. And get this, they can still hear Clara's whispers echoing from within.
How very intriguing. Do they help Clara find peace or unleash something far more sinister? That's the question this fictional podcast leaves us with, isn't it? But there's something else I find interesting. The library itself. It feels different, changed. It makes you wonder about the nature of stories themselves, doesn't it?
Yeah, doesn't it? Even though we're dealing with this fictional podcast, the questions it raises, the chills it sends down our spines, they're as real as the shadows in an old library. And as we wrap up this deep dive into Shadow and Enigma Hunters, one question lingers. What secrets are you carrying, listener, and how far would you go to uncover them?